All right, let's jump right into this explainer where we'll be journeying from the very surface of workplace communication all the way down into the deep, often totally hidden psychology of human interactions. Have you ever wondered why a simple conversation with a coworker can just suddenly turn tense out of nowhere? Or why a client might get defensive over a completely standard proposal? Well, the truth is, what we say at work is really just the tip of the iceberg. Today, we're going to explore the massive psychological structures operating just beneath the waterline, and we're basing this on curriculum from the Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. Looking at our roadmap today, we're going to hit 5 key areas. We'll start with the basic anatomy of communication, dip down into our hidden psychological barriers, explore some common unconscious defense mechanisms, look at the flip side with mature mechanisms and sublimation, and then wrap it all up by decoding the Johari window. Now, a quick note on our source material. We are drawing directly from the Indian Institute of Banking and Finance's training material. And look, while this is definitely rooted in the high-stakes world of banking, an industry where trust and transparent communication are absolutely make or break, the psychology here, it applies to literally any workplace. The whole goal is to help you connect, communicate, and build rock-solid relationships across the board. Okay, section 1, the anatomy of communication. Let's just start right at the surface level with the basic anatomy of how we actually exchange information with our colleagues and clients every single day. Look at this breakdown from Albert Mehrabian's famous 1971 study. It's honestly kind of wild. It proves that communication is overwhelmingly nonverbal. People are sizing us up constantly, and they're doing it mostly based on body gestures. I mean, that's a massive 55% of the message. Your tone of voice? That's another 38%, but your actual literal words are sitting there at a measly 7%. So highly effective communication isn't just about what you say, it's the whole package of behaviors and mannerisms working together. Moving to section 2, our hidden psychological barriers. Since we've established that our spoken words are just that tiny tip of the iceberg, let's go below the waterline. Let's explore what actually happens when our needs aren't being met in the workplace. This is where the psychology gets really fascinating. It's basically a sequential psychological chain reaction. Think about it. We all have a need, right? That need gives us direction, which turns into a drive. But what happens when that drive smacks right into a barrier? Well, it results in either success or failure. And when it's a failure, our mind instantly goes on the defensive to cope with that frustration. And here's a crucial reality the IBF material really drives home. We absolutely all use these mental defense mechanisms. Nobody is immune. We use them to handle our anxieties, to feel a little bit better about ourselves, and sometimes just to completely avoid facing a harsh reality. But here's the catch. While they're great at protecting our egos in the short term, they only treat the symptoms. They do absolutely nothing to solve the underlying communication problem itself. Section 3, common unconscious defense mechanisms. The trick here is understanding exactly which defense mechanisms we're deploying unconsciously. Because if we can recognize them, we can actually manage them. Let's look at a few of the heavy hitters that disrupt our workplaces. First step, we have displacement. This one is a classic misdirection of frustration, and it heavily pollutes both work and home life. It happens when you unconsciously swap out one person for another, and you end up reacting to that second person as if they were the one who originally made you mad. Here's a textbook example. An employee gets disciplined at work, but obviously he can't safely yell at his boss, right? So he bottles it up, goes home, and just unleashes that exact same frustration on his spouse. It perfectly illustrates how unaddressed tension at work cascades destructively right into our personal lives. Next, let's talk about repression and suppression. These sound super similar, but they operate very differently. Repression is the most common defense, and it happens completely under the radar, unconsciously pushing intolerable ideas totally out of your awareness. Suppression, on the other hand, is a conscious, deliberate choice to just refuse to acknowledge those difficult feelings. Notice the stark contrast here. On the left, you've got a hostage who survives 6 months of captivity, but their mind just blanks out the trauma. They literally cannot recall it. That is unconscious repression. On the right side, you have a terminally ill patient who actively, deliberately shelves their very real anxiety for an afternoon just so they can enjoy a family gathering. That is conscious suppression. See the difference? Two other massive barriers to clear communication are rationalization and denial. Rationalization is when we unconsciously invent these really good, socially acceptable excuses to explain away a failure. Denial goes way deeper. That's when a reality or feeling is just so incredibly tough to face that the mind unconsciously totally disowns it. To put that in perspective, think of a bank officer who gets passed over for a promotion. Instead of admitting they might need to upskill, they rationalize it by saying, well, the whole process was unfair anyway. They invent a convenient excuse. Compare that to the extreme reality of denial, like a substance user who completely rejects the truth of their addiction, claiming they don't have a problem despite really dangerous behavior staring them right in the face. Section 4. Mature mechanisms and sublimation. Now that we've seen the immature, often destructive defenses, let's flip the script. How can our minds actually channel these exact same stresses into mature, socially acceptable behaviors? Believe it or not, humor is actually classified as a highly mature defense mechanism. It's a fantastic social lubricant. It lets us safely express some really heavy, difficult thoughts without creating personal discomfort for ourselves or, making it incredibly awkward for the people around us. Like, think about an overweight comedian making jokes about their own weight. On the surface, yeah, we're all laughing, but psychologically, it's a highly sophisticated mechanism used to cover and process underlying pain and anxiety in a way that society completely accepts and even applauds. And then we have sublimation. Psychologists often consider this the absolute gold standard, the most mature defense mechanism of all. It's basically the ultimate psychological recycling program. It's when you take a completely unacceptable impulse and you successfully channel it into a highly productive, socially acceptable direction. The IBF material actually gives this wildly vivid, extreme example to make the concept stick. Jack the Ripper becomes a surgeon. I know, it's a dark thought, right? But it really makes the concept click. It highlights how an entirely unacceptable, violent impulse can theoretically be channeled and refined into a highly respected, functional, life-saving role. That is sublimation in its purest form. Finally, Section 5, Decoding the Johari Window. So having explored those deep, murky waters of our psychology, we are finally ready to resurface. We need a practical way to navigate these interpersonal dynamics at work, and for that, we have a brilliant mapping tool. Enter the Johari window. It was created by two psychologists, Joe Luft and Harry Ingham. And yeah, they brilliantly just mashed their first names together to get Johari. Honestly, it serves as the ultimate model for building self-awareness, improving how we communicate, and really developing a team. This matrix right here is where the magic happens. By dividing information, our feelings, our motivations, our skills, into these 4 distinct quadrants, we can actually visually map our communication. You've got the arena, which is what everyone knows, the facade, the stuff you actively hide, the blind area, what others see in you but you don't realize yourself, and that unknown area, the deep, unconscious stuff we just spent time talking about. Mapping it out like this lets you pinpoint the exact location of your communication breakdowns. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with a vital question to chew on. Take a hard look at those 4 quadrants. Which one of those hidden psychological pains, your blind spots, your facades, or those sneaky, unconscious defense mechanisms, is currently acting as the silent barrier to your own professional excellence? Figure that out, and you are golden. Until next time, keep analyzing the iceberg.